Welcome back, everyone.
Episode 33, Scorn.
So the episode begins with us checking in with our boy Nier, as we see him putting together a cardboard construction of Tokyo Tower. We also find out that he's planning on heading to Japan himself, following behind Mello and the rest of the SBK who are apparently there now. When did the SBK get there? I don't know. But it's made clear that they are when Nier ends up reaching out to Rester and asks him to head back to New York. And it's actually funny because Rester's like, oh, so you just want me to hang tight in New York while everyone else is in Japan? But Nier's like, no, nothing like that. I just, I need an escort. Because apparently...
I've never made travel arrangements or boarded a flight on my own before.
And I thought that was oddly endearing. The idea that he's one of the world's most skilled detectives, currently tackling one of, if not the most important case in human history, and he can't even book his own flight. Which I'm not knocking him for, I'm sure he could figure it out, but it's just funny that he reached out to Rester for help doing it. Now from there we fast forward an indeterminate amount of time as we see Nier and Rester on a plane. And Nier really does come off as a little kid during this scene, with the way that he passes one of his toys to Rester in exchange for a different one. It actually kind of reminds me of my daughter a little bit. I also love Rester's face. Dude's like, when did I become a babysitter? Now, moving on from that scene, we check back in with the task force, where it appears as though the gang has found a way to infiltrate NHN. Which... when did they even decide to do that? The last thing we heard was that they were just using Light to investigate Takada, but now they're apparently trying to infiltrate the building too. And to go over exactly what they've done, they've seemingly made a push for MISA to have some sort of comeback tour via NHN. And they're going this route because apparently it's super difficult to get into the building these days, given NHN has essentially become Kira's personal broadcasting network. Which, okay, that's all understandable. NHN has tight security, so the only way in is by having legitimate access. And the only way to get legitimate access is by using MISA and Mogi, who's still playing the role of her manager. And all of that is fine. It's kind of just a repeat of the Yotsuba arc. But it's just interesting how quickly this has all happened. The last time we saw them, Mogi had made dinner for Misa, and now they're basically undercover again. Like, what? And it's not a big deal. Like I said, it's all understandable, but I point this out because I'm really starting to see what people mean by things being a bit rushed. Unless it's like that in the manga too. I'm not really sure about that just yet. But regardless, this is where we are. Misa and Mogi have infiltrated NHN while Light is still investigating Takada. And I'd say it's worth noting that when Light mentions that fact, we see Aizawa just glaring at him.
In the meantime, I'll continue investigating Takada.
Like, Aizawa doesn't trust this man at all. And that's fair. I mean, honestly, why is Light able to continue seeing Takada privately? Why would Kira even allow that? Unless Light is providing some sort of crucial information to Takada, then I don't see why Kira would be okay with the son of the former co-leader of the Kira task force kikiing it up with his spokesperson. Like, come on now. But anyway, suddenly the task force gets a call from Nier, who's calling to let them know that he's currently in Japan.
He's in Japan? Why tell me? He's up to something.
Well, no shit, Light. Obviously he's up to something. His whole thing is trying to catch you. Now, Nier continues the conversation by surmising that by now the task force has gone ahead and made contact with Takada, saying,
It's a given that if we want to get any closer to capturing Kira, we'll have to keep an eye on Kiyomi Takada and NHN in general.
And this really stood out to me because where was this energy with Demigawa? I mean, at no point, as far as I'm aware, do either of the investigative teams look into getting close to Demigawa in the hopes that it'll lead to Kira. And yet, when it comes to Takada, they're all trying to get close to her to do exactly that. I don't know, it just seems odd to me. Not bad or anything, just weird that they all have such a hard-on for her as opposed to Demigawa, even though they're essentially playing the same role. But getting back to what Nier is saying, he tells Light to just straight up tell Takada that he's in town. Tell her the SPK's here. Tell her how many people there are on the team. tell her everything. And the reason he wants Light to do this is because she'll have no choice but to inform Kira, which means that Kira's definitely gonna try and come after them. As Nier puts it, he won't be able to resist the opportunity, which is true. I mean, this is his chance to finally knock everyone off the board all at once. Now, as their conversation continues, we enter what looks like a version of the metaphysical realm that we saw back in episode 15. Kind of. I mean, it's definitely meant to be an abstract representation of their conversation, as they seem to be on a sort of platform ascending what I believe is Tokyo Tower. But it's very different from the last time we saw this presented. And I'm mostly talking about the coloring. Because in episode 15, the color of the cityscape, the sky, even our characters' clothes and skin were all muted. All except for the color of their hair, which was represented as red and blue respectively. But that's not how it's presented here. Instead, everything retains its color. The cityscape, the sky, as well as our characters' clothes and skin. I mean, Light's hair does have a sort of reddish tint to it, but I'm thinking that's more because of the lighting than anything else. And I say that because after this scene, we see him embody his normal crimson color, and it looks different than what we're seeing here. But yeah, the change in approach was something that really stood out to me during this scene. And I guess one could justify the change by making the argument that this different situation/conflict warrants its own unique presentation style, which I could totally get behind. Now, as far as what they're saying, it's honestly not super important. They're basically just saying that since they're both in Japan, they might have the opportunity to meet in person to finish this case together. Now, obviously, there's double meaning in what they're saying, since Nier is, fairly confident that Light is Kira. So when Nier suggests that they meet in person, it's more so him saying, "I can't wait to arrest your bitch ass." And when Light agrees to meet up in person, it's more so him saying, "I can't wait to teabag your grave just like I did with Els." And yes, I'm aware of this crazy ass scene, and it's just... Maybe I'll talk about the Relight movies one day, because while I haven't actually watched them in their entirety before, some of the clips that I have seen are just super out of pocket, and not just in Light's case. But okay, from there they end the call, and Light goes on to think to himself,
"From the very beginning, it's been a one-on-one fight against Al. And even though he's dead, battle's just shifted to his heirs."
And I thought this was interesting in a couple of ways. Firstly, from a visual standpoint, I just really like this clip because it's drawing direct influence from episode 2, back when Elle was originally introduced. Like, it's the same aesthetic of using a film reel to show the history of the character. Except instead of shots of random cases that he's solved in the past, it's noteworthy moments from Light and Elle's shared history, starting from episode 2 all the way to episode 25. It even has the same background, which I'm thinking this is supposed to be a map of the world, starting from Japan and ending in South America. It's all just really cool. Now, secondly, in regard to what he's saying, I find it interesting that Light just views this whole thing as a non-stop battle with Elle. Like, he doesn't even care to give Nier and Mello a sense of agency. He just describes them as Elle's heirs trying to follow in his footsteps, which, as far as he's concerned, their desire to follow in Elle's footsteps is going to lead them straight to the grave alongside him. But yeah, while I'm not going to go over the rest of Light's speech, because it's really not super pertinent, it's mostly just him saying that this will all end once he gets rid of Mello and Nier, I will say that Brad Swale was killing it with the voice acting here, because the Light definitely sounds sinister and menacing as he speaks, and I just really dig it. Now from there we head over to Team Nier as they go over the facts of the investigation, starting with Nier laying out the fact that Light Yagami is Elle, and that he is also Kira. So going forward, they're just going to call him El Kira. And as far as whoever's out there with the notebook currently, they're going to call him X Kira. Which, I don't know if this was the goal when coming up with that name, but to me, it just reminds me of like a math equation. Solving for X, like you want to solve for what, or in this case, who X is. Is that just me being a nerd or whatever? Nier also makes it clear that given the way ex-Kira has gone about killing people, like with how he handled the Sakura TV incident, it's very likely that he's made the deal for the Shinigami eyes. Which, yeah, it seems obvious enough given the way he cleaned house before the guys up there were even formally introduced. Now, after that, Nier surmises that, given the fact that El Kira is under constant surveillance from the task force, that means that he and ex-Kira can't communicate. But, since both El Kira and ex-Kira are in contact with Takada, they must be using her to communicate with each other. And, yeah, everything he said is spot on. But, to be fair, none of this is too difficult to figure out given the information is pretty much all there. Now, where things get interesting is when Nier speaks to how they're going to go about catching them. And he claims that there are two possible ways that they can go about it.
One, we arrange to kill both El Kira and ex-Kira.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Yeah, this is honestly the best way to go about doing this. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but playing this shit fair is just not the way at this point. I mean, there's just way too much at stake to try and play by the rules on this one. I know you're treating it like a game and you want to win fairly, but shit, some games encourage using cheats. I'm just saying. But alas, taking that route wouldn't be nearly as entertaining. So because of that...
However, no matter what might happen, we will never resort to that.
And I really love the fact that in response to Nier saying that, Rester's like...
Why not?
Which, yeah, what's the in-universe reason for not doing that? Because I imagine these federal agents would be so down to just headshot these dudes and keep it pushing. But alas, that's not gonna fly.
That's not the way we work, Commander. Such ex post facto justification will not be tolerated.
Which, okay, fine, we'll do things your way. Now, it's also worth noting that Nier invokes L's name when providing his explanation for why they won't go that route, claiming it'd be an insult to him to finish the investigation like that. Which, yeah, okay, I guess I could see that. Now, as far as the second way they can go about catching Kira, Nier said, we're switching scenes? Okay, I guess we'll find out later. So from here we transition to a hotel room, where we find Light and Takada on another date. And to be honest, they're not really talking about anything all that important, as made fairly obvious by the fact that Matsuda says,
"This is kinda boring listening to audio only without any video feed."
Now, it is worth pointing out that that line is a piece of expository dialogue, because it's letting us know that while they are listening in on the conversation, they're not actually able to see anything. And I'm guessing the reason wiretaps are still allowed is because they're more difficult to find, maybe? I mean, that makes about as much sense as Kira allowing these meetings to happen in the first place, so whatever. But having said that, the reason the conversation is so boring is because it's just filler. Because the real conversation is happening through text, as Light and Takada can be seen passing notes between each other.
Make sure not to let the people listening to this conversation hear your reactions.
And I just gotta say, that's gotta be a bitch to try and do. Like having two conversations simultaneously, one that's being written down and the other that's being spoken aloud, all while knowing that you're being listened to and that you need to be convincing to the people listening in. I mean, that's almost impossible, I feel. Which is kind of reflected through how Takada handles the situation. Because shortly after this, Light hands her this note wherein he tells her,
I want you to begin judging and punishing people as Kira.
And as you just saw, she wasn't exactly subtle with her reaction. Which, I mean, fair. So fair. That's a crazy thing to drop on someone in any situation, let alone this situation. And to her credit, I think she handled it better than most. I mean, I said this back in episode 25, but it's one thing to support Kira. It's something else to be the one acting as Kira. And hell, when I said that, it was in regard to MISA, who at that point had already acted as Kira in some capacity in the past. But Takada? She's never been a Kira. So to be told that she's going to act as Kira, I mean, that's a lot. But before we actually move on, I gotta express my issue with how this scene played out. Because if I was listening in to this conversation, I would definitely think that something is up. And I say that because, well, listen to this real quick.
Reach out to Kira. Tell him what you think he needs to know.
Now, you probably heard that and thought, well, what's the issue? And that's understandable. Listening to this scene the way I just played it makes sense. He said something that was fairly alarming and she reacted alarmed when she heard it. But the thing is, in the show, that's not how that scene plays out. Because she doesn't react like that right after hearing him say that. No, there's a delay. And not a delay of a couple of seconds, which could still be somewhat understandable. No, there's a delay of 15 seconds between him saying that she needs to reach out to Kira and her responding like that. And that's weird. Really weird, because what happened? I mean, we know what happened. It took 15 seconds for Light to pass the note and for her to read it and subsequently react to it. But the task force doesn't know that. And as such, they should really be wondering what happened during that period of time when nothing was said. Like, they react to her reaction by gasping. But I feel like they should be confused more than anything, because why did she suddenly gasp 15 seconds after Light made that comment? And look, I tried to give the show the benefit of the doubt. I was thinking maybe this was playing out like their internal monologues, where time slows down around them while they're thinking about stuff. I was thinking maybe it was like that. But no, it's 15 seconds in real time, because I didn't start my timer until Light passed the note, and as we hear her reading the notes, we can see her physically shift from one note to the other in real time. So yeah, it's 15 real seconds of silence. So that's something I definitely bring up to Light after the fact, because it is odd. Almost like it wasn't what he said that she was reacting to, but instead something else that happened. See, how this scene should have gone down is we should have had Light talking in the background as she was reading the note. Then, right as she finished reading it, we would have heard Light finish what he was saying, which would then make the scene play out more naturally, like the version I showed y'all a minute ago. Instead, by doing it this way, it just makes the task force seem even more incompetent for not even questioning what the hell happened there. But I guess making the task force look like a bunch of idiots is par for the course these days, because after Takada ultimately says that she'll do it, we hear Ide and Matsuda say,
You nailed it.
That's our Light for you. He's good.
which, I mean, yeah, he is. Better than you can even imagine. Now from there we move things along and check in with Mikami as he receives a call from Takada. And she's calling to let him know that he's going to need to send her some pages from the notebook. And how they're going to go about doing it is by having him send it via some fan mail, which is really smart and unsuspecting. Now, obviously, this request, or really this demand, catches Mikami off guard. Because, you know, he's like, wait, this is my notebook. What do you mean you need pages from it? And actually, I want to just take a second to talk about their dynamic. Because I wonder if it's in any way frustrating for him to now be, in a sense, taking orders from her. Yes, they're coming from Kira, but it's an interesting dynamic to go from being Kira in Takada's eyes to being Kira's bitch in her eyes. Like, he was the one giving her orders, telling her what to do, and now it's essentially the opposite. I imagine that has to bug him a little, and we do see a hint of that kind of a little later in this scene, but we'll get to that in just a second. So Takada goes on to say that in addition to sending her pages from the notebook, he needs to refrain from using the notebook going forward, and instead,
You must continue entering names in a fake notebook.
A fake?
and I really love the way Mikami responds. Like, he sounds low-key annoyed. Like, the fuck you mean, a fake? Now, to be clear, he doesn't push back on it or anything. He's a soldier through and through, so he's gonna follow orders. But it doesn't stop him from, at the very least, questioning what's going on to himself after getting off the phone with Takada. But even in his own head, he doesn't allow himself to question Kira too much, instead stopping himself as he thinks,
No, it's not my place to question God. His will is absolute.
I find it really interesting that he still refers to Kira as God even now. I mean, it's one thing to say it when you don't really understand how the power works. I could completely understand how you would think the individual doing it might actually be a god. But now Mikami gets it. Now he sees how the sausage is made. He knows that, in reality, Kira isn't some sort of deity. He's just another guy with a notebook like the one Mikami has in front of him. Hell, I would argue that the fact that Mikami now has to tear pages out of the notebook and just send them to someone else so that they can do exactly what he does would make it all the more apparent that literally anyone can do this. So it's just fascinating to me that despite the fact that he logically understands that, he still chooses to refer to Kira as God. But yeah, the final shot we see before heading into the break is that of Takada looking, I'd say that she's looking kind of sad or melancholic, which makes sense. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but this is a big ask from Light. I mean, she's gotta kill people, and that's not something that most people are happy about. I mean, Mikami was, but I wouldn't use Mikami as a baseline, you know? Light's probably a much better baseline to pull from, plus, really, he's the only other person we get to see from the beginning of their journey, seeing as we're introduced to both MISA and Higuchi several weeks into their respective tenures as Kira. And so, going by Light, who still might not be the best choice, seeing as he only used it for shits and giggles the first time without fully understanding what was going to happen. But regardless, when he realized what he had done, that he had taken multiple lives that day, it shook him and irrevocably changed him. In short, it was a big deal. And hell, even with MISA on her second time around as Kira, she wasn't exactly thrilled to do it. Like, she was completely despondent as she took on the mantle again back in episode 25, because she knew just how much of a toll it takes to be Kira. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So now, as we see Takada here just mulling over what she's going to have to do, I imagine she's wondering whether or not she can carry that weight. And I like that. I like the idea of someone not being thrilled to do this shit, because I imagine that this shit sucks to have to do. But yeah, with all of that being said, welcome back to How to Use It. First up, in the event that there are more than 6 death notes in the human world, only the first 6 death notes that have been delivered to humans will have an effect. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. However, that being said, 6 notebooks? That's a lot as is. But this rule is also specifically saying that only the 6 notebooks belonging to humans will continue to work. So going by this, it kind of implies that humans just have priority over Shinigami when it comes to notebooks in their realm. Like, this rule basically implies that if 5 humans own notebooks, so if Light, MISA, Higuchi, Mikami, and Takada all had their own notebooks, with Ryuk holding the 6th notebook, that means that if a 7th notebook showed up in the human world and, say, I don't know, Mello got his hands on it, that would mean that Ryuk's notebook would be essentially disabled. Well, at least temporarily. But yeah, next up, the 7th death note will not become active until one of the other 6 death notes is burned up, or a god of death takes one of them back to the world of the gods of death. And again, pretty straightforward. Not really much to add here except, I guess I do wonder what would happen if you wrote a name down in that 7th notebook while it was inactive. Would the kill still be valid when or if one of the prior 6 notebooks gets burned up or sent back to the Shinigami realm? I mean, I doubt it, but I don't know. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments section. Okay, so when we get back from the break, we see things start off with our first look at Takada's TV show, called Today's Miss Takada, which seems like an odd English translation, but no worse than Raleigh Connor, so I'm not complaining. Anyway, the show itself isn't the important part of this scene, but rather this specific part of the show where they talk about Takada's 4 new female bodyguards. And when it comes to these bodyguards, it's worth noting that one of these women is not like the others.
The second is a former CIA agent, Miss Hal Lidner.
Oh shit, she is actually CIA. Remember how I came up with that whole bullshit, totally legit reasoning for why these 3 members of the SPK survived when everyone else got killed? How I said that Mello might have had the FBI director email information on the FBI agents, but that he couldn't do it for the CIA agents? Well, this adds some credibility to it because Lidner is now confirmed to be ex-CIA. But yeah, Light's quick to assume that, given her background, Lidner must be the one working with the SPK, which makes sense, but also, who picked Lidner to join this group? Was it Takada? If so, did she do it because she also thinks that Lidner's SPK? And if she does, then it just seems like a strange choice. I get the idea of keeping your friends close but your enemies closer, but still, I don't know. I guess if nothing else, the SPK would definitely prioritize keeping her safe, seeing as they theoretically need her to get to Kira. So maybe there's no one better to protect her than an SPK member. Anyway, moving on.
Who would I choose to be ex-Kira?
So in this scene, we focus in on Nier as he tries to deduce who ex-Kira might be. And as we can see, he's combing through quite a bit of data. I'm talking dozens, scratch that, hundreds of data disks, many of which are currently being projected across dozens of screens at the same time. And while the anime is a little lazy with it and just reuses the same assets from earlier in the show multiple times, we have to imagine that all of these discs cover all 6 years of Kira's reign. And look, Nier's good, there's no denying that, but I mean, the idea of finding a single person amidst the billions of people in the world, like, it's a valiant effort, but there's no way he's gonna figure it out? What the fuck is this? Why am I suddenly watching Avatar? This isn't the channel for that. And wait, what? He did it? He found Mikami just like that? I don't even really have a problem with this, if I'm being honest. Like, don't get me wrong, I get that people typically have sort of a visceral reaction to this scene, but surprisingly enough, I'm not one of them. Now, do I think Nier going into the Avatar state is a choice? Definitely. It comes out of nowhere and it makes it seem like Nier's got some sort of superpower or something. Like he's finna call on his past lives for, oh wait, no, they're all gone. Regardless, it's definitely an odd choice. But him narrowing things down to Mikami so quickly, by which I mean in a matter of hours or days, because I'm doubting we're supposed to actually believe he did this in 10 seconds, surprisingly, I don't have an issue with that. But let me explain. So for starters, let's point out the most important aspect of this scene. Nier doesn't know that Mikami is Kira. He's locked in on him, sure, but he's not saying, oh hey guys, I just found ex-Kira. No, in fact, what he says is,
could ex-Kira be Teru Mikami?
He's making an assumption, an educated guess based on the information that he has available. And let's talk about the information that he has available. It's a veritable shit ton. Too much for one person to go through, one might say, but at the same time, not really. Because while there is a lot here, and while most of what's being shown on the screens are clips from the first half of the show, it wouldn't actually make sense to go back 5 years to search for who ex-Kira is. Ex-Kira is someone new. Someone who the original Kira would have had to have found recently. Like within the last couple of weeks or months, because that's when Nier and Mello showed up and started applying pressure. Before that, there wouldn't have been a reason for Kira to be looking at possible replacements, because he had the whole situation, the whole world locked down. So if I was Nier, I'd start from either today backwards, or I'd start it around the time Mello and I started throwing wrenches in the machine, which ultimately narrows it down significantly. So now that we've gone ahead and narrowed down the time frame that we're going to start looking at, it's also worth keeping in mind that Kira has an affinity towards the Japanese people, most likely because he is Japanese himself. Like, for example, the original Kira went a long time without killing any Japanese officers. In fact, we don't see the original Kira kill any Japanese officers until he kills the director of the NPA. Any other NPA officers who died during Kira's reign were killed by other Kiras, i.e. MISA and or Higuchi. But by comparison, the original Kira didn't hesitate to kill those FBI agents back in 2006. He wiped them out immediately. It's also worth pointing out that ex-Kira chose Takada, another Japanese person, to be his official spokesperson, which just reinforces the idea that ex-Kira is also probably Japanese himself. But back to what I was saying, in attempting to narrow the search, it makes sense to approach things with the idea that Kira would pick someone from Japan to act as the new Kira. One, because he's much more likely to find a like-minded individual in the same country. Two, because it'd be much easier to do more research on someone in the same country than it would be to find the same sort of information from someone from a different country. Trust me, I know this from working in fraud. And three, because it just keeps things relatively contained and controlled. Trying to keep a leash on a person from a completely different part of the world would just be too cumbersome for Kira right now. So yeah, again, we've gone ahead and narrowed down the list of possible individuals. Now, next, and this part's very important, Mikami wants to be seen. Like, that was his whole thing. He wanted to stand out and be noticed by Kira. And sure, lots of people probably do, but I highly doubt that there's a large pool of people as intelligent, as committed, and as outspoken as Mikami is. I'm not saying these people don't exist outside of Mikami. I mean, Takada is like that herself, kind of. And I say kind of because Mikami explained in the last episode that it took getting to know her to really understand that she was an ardent Kira supporter herself. However, when it comes to Mikami, he was always spouting about how much he worshipped Kira. I mean, just before Nier claims that Mikami might be ex-Kira, we get like 20 seconds of Mikami just glazing Kira. Also, another thing about this scene is that Nier mentions the fact that whoever ex-Kira is, he had to have had an intimate relationship with Takada, which narrows things down even further because if you're looking at recent footage in Japan that is focusing on Takada, then I mean, it's super easy to find Mikami. And given how he speaks about Kira in the footage that's available, and how it ultimately sounds very similar to how Takada is speaking about Kira now,
we should follow his teachings, exactly as Kira ordered.
And the meaning of his teachings must be made mandatory.
It is of the utmost importance that young people do all they can to contribute.
You will also not forgive those who refuse to use their abilities to contribute to the betterment of society.
It's only natural to just jump right to the conclusion that Mikami is very likely ex-Kira. And yeah. Now, something else before we move on that I never noticed before because I'm always more so anticipating seeing Avatar Nier, but when Takada is talking, she says something very interesting.
Kira will not forgive any crime, no matter how small. You should assume that any person alive is a viable target.
Yeah, I thought that last episode was bad with the whole living wastefully and not contributing, but this is just, I mean, in no uncertain terms, everyone is just clearly fair game. She deadass said any person alive is a viable target. Fucking hell. Anyway, let's keep it moving.
So tell me why I'm not the headliner.
Oh shit. Actually, can we go back? No? Okay. Well, here we catch back up with MISA, and she's apparently upset because she's not the headliner of the East-West Pop Music Festival, which is so weird because I forget that MISA is a pop star, meaning she's a singer, which is just never really expanded upon. We see her doing photo shoots, we see her acting, and we see her makeup brand, but we've never really seen her sing before. Well, at least not outside of that song in episode 25, which I'm imagining didn't top the charts when it was released. But no, I'm more so saying that we never see her pulling in Ai Hoshino or Nana Osaki, you know? But I guess that's neither here nor there. So getting back to this scene, Misa's already annoyed because she's not the headliner. So when she stumbles upon Takada, well, it sure doesn't help things.
What an idiot! She doesn't even realize that Light's just using her for his investigation.
Girl, what? Why would you say something like that? Do you know how risky that was?
Duh, I know that. That's why I whispered it quietly.
You didn't though! You said that shit loud as hell! You can see Takada acknowledging what you were saying as you said it, dumbass! Holy shit! Do you wanna die? Like, what was that, my girl? Like, it's one thing that you're putting your life at risk saying that, but what's even crazier to me is that you're also putting Light's life at risk too. Like, what do you think would happen if Takada found out that Light was using her to get Takeda? Come on now, I've spent years... Wait, has it actually been years? Oh shit, it's actually been years. How am I not done with this yet?
Hi.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But as I was saying, I've spent years defending you, but you are making it hella difficult right now because that's actually just egregious. If it weren't for the fact that Light is Kira, the two of y'all would be screwed. But anyway, after hearing Misa say that, Takada just... she just smirks and walks away, and it's actually incredibly disrespectful, I'm not gonna lie. Takada won that interaction without even saying anything. And it gets even worse because the fact that Takada doesn't engage and instead just starts walking away, it riles Misa up enough to storm after her. But unfortunately for her, Lidner just randomly spawns in the middle of the hallway between them and winds up binding Misa's arms behind her back. And it's just, it's embarrassing to watch. Like, you just got bitched out twice, Misa.
That young lady is actually a very good friend of mine. You shouldn't be so rough with her.
Oh, my bad. Make that 3 times. Because having the same woman you were just talking shit about be the one to release you? That's even more embarrassing, to be honest. So, Misa, you done struck out. I'm gonna need you to give it a break.
That was so frustrating!
Now from there we head over to the task force for a second as they receive yet another call from Nier. But instead of wanting to talk to L this time around, Nier instead wants to have a conversation with Aizawa, specifically regarding the meetings between L and Takada and whether or not they're recording both the audio and video during these encounters, which is important and worth noting. And as we already know, they're only recording the audio, which results in Nier saying,
How interesting.
Before promptly ending the call. Now after that we follow Nier for a bit as he and the members of the SPK discuss their game plan, which consists of using Lidner to distract Takada and the 2 Kiras. Their hope is that with the 3 of them focusing on Lidner, they won't notice Gevanni investigating Mikami, which is something that he's already started doing. However, Gevanni's not really convinced that Mikami is ex-Kira.
It's ridiculously easy to trail him. There's nothing unusual about him. I'm beginning to think he can't be ex-Kira.
So I can kind of understand where Gevanni is coming from, but at the same time, we're talking about Kira here. Yes, it's a newer Kira, but he's also someone who was handpicked by the original Kira. So you should assume that he knows how to conduct himself so as not to draw undue attention to himself. But regardless of how Gevanni feels, Nier makes it clear that Mikami is very likely ex-Kira, as he tells Gevanni to continue monitoring him as he's been doing. Now from there we make our way back to NHN, where we see Misa and Mogi receiving a phone call from Lidner and Takada. And Takada is apparently inviting Misa out to dinner tonight, which obviously, given their last interaction, Misa's definitely not gonna even entertain the idea of
Good idea. Tell her okay.
My reaction to this is actually just Mogi's reaction, because girl, you need to stop. You're really not beating the stupid allegations right now. Because really, why would you want to hang out with this woman? I mean, for one, you're opening yourself up to potentially being killed. Like, this woman has a direct line to Kira. You should be terrified of her. Now, from there we fast forward to later that evening. And something I want to point out is this episode is heavy on the Christmas vibes. For example, I didn't mention it earlier, but in a previous scene we saw Nier sticking ornaments on a Christmas tree. The ornaments being the little, totally not Lego brand characters he's made for Kira and the gang. And he actually has some of these for everyone involved in the investigation. But in addition to that, as we make our way to MISA and Takada's dinner, we also see a lot of Christmas lights and decorations posted around the city. And I just thought that was worth pointing out. But now that we're here, let's go ahead and dive into this dinner scene, which, I'll be honest, there's not much substance here. It's basically just a really subdued verbal catfight.
And as for you, you'll probably be executed.
Okay, maybe subdued isn't the right word for it, but let's go ahead and see how we get to that point of the conversation. Because it doesn't just start off with her saying that. No, at first, they're both pretty cordial. Takada starts by apologizing for making MISA wait so long, saying that she couldn't meet until after the nightly news, and then MISA says that it's fine and that she's sort of a night owl herself before throwing back a whole glass of red wine, which... Okay, girl, can we maybe just dial it back a bit? And she's pouring another one. Fucking hell. But after this, Takada goes on to say,
Light must be pretty busy. How do you two manage?
And I'm not gonna lie, she's cold for that one. She knows damn well she's dating this woman's man, and she's just so nonchalant about it. But MISA goes on to tell her that everything's great with her and Light, which she may very well believe, honestly. I really don't know what their relationship looks like these days. I was under the impression that he's kind of just stopped coming home altogether, but maybe that's not the case? It's not like the show is making any effort to really dive into the relationship at this point. MISA's role in the story has diminished greatly now that she's no longer one of the Kiras. Yes, she's still relevant because she can get the task force into NHN, but aside from that, she's been relegated to kind of a secondary character now. But like I was saying, she talks up her relationship with Light, saying that he's all over her the moment he walks through the door, which, okay, not sure how much I'm buying that, but again, I wouldn't know. Now, after that, she ends up saying,
I'm going to announce my engagement to Light at the Pop Music Festival.
Okay, I'm definitely not buying that one. Or, well, let me clarify. I definitely don't believe that they're engaged. But I might believe that MISA would do something as crazy as announce an engagement anyway. But then Takada ends up responding by saying,
Why not? If you're able to, that is.
Which sounds a little bit like a threat, right? And that's exactly how MISA takes it, even going as far as to accuse Takada of possibly sicking Kira on her. To which Takada denies that by saying that she's always thought of MISA as a friend, which, when have y'all ever even met? I know that Takada said it earlier when getting Lidner to let MISA go, but I just kind of took that as her just saying that so that Lidner wouldn't make a big deal about it. But saying it here, I mean, when have y'all ever interacted with each other? It's not like y'all went to school together, and even if you had, Light acted as though he hadn't seen or talked to Takada since college, so I don't really see how y'all could have ever even met before you both started working at NHN. But okay, after Takada denies wanting to kill her, MISA goes on to say that she's not worried about Kira anyway, because
I know for sure that Light's gonna catch him soon.
And it's just so crazy to me how careless this woman is. Like, she has to know that Light is approaching Takada under the guise of being a Kira supporter, and yet she just keeps making it clear that Light is still working to try and catch him. Like, if Light wasn't Kira, he would be so monumentally screwed. It's actually insane just how much of a liability MISA is. But yeah, it's at this point, as she chugs the wine straight from the bottle, that she ends up saying,
And as for you, you'll probably be executed.
Which is such a crazy thing to say to anyone, really, but let's blame it on the alcohol, I guess. Now, MISA saying this causes Takada to knock over her drink and start coughing, which, credit to MISA, she actually looks kinda worried about her. But she shouldn't be, because Takada's over there laughing at MISA, like just chuckling at the whole situation as she goes on to have a flashback to the previous episode, back when Light told her that she would be the goddess of the new world. So essentially, she's completely unbothered by MISA's little antics. Probably even more so because with MISA saying that, she's made it clear that she really has no idea that Light is actually Kira. Now, after this, Takada wraps the dinner up and proceeds to drop the pleasantries entirely by straight up telling MISA,
I should have waited until you grew up and learned a few manners before I invited you to dinner.
Honestly, she's not even wrong. MISA was messy as hell during that dinner, talking shit and getting way too drunk. But interestingly enough, despite the fact that she was thoroughly embarrassed throughout that dinner, MISA walked away, or maybe crawled away, thinking that she was the winner tonight.
I won after all.
Won?
Yeah, it was easy.
So both of them felt like they came away from that dinner as the winner, when in reality, they're both fucking losers because the man they're fighting for doesn't give a shit about them. Sure, Light may like Takada more than MISA, but she's still just another tool at the end of the day. So yeah, let's just keep it moving. Now from there we check in with the SPK as we see Lidner giving her report to Nier and Rester about tonight's antics. And when Rester asks Nier what he thinks of it all, Nier responds by saying,
Light Yagami is popular with the ladies.
Which is true, but also the way Nier said it was just hilarious to me, especially with the figurines that he has for the three of them. But okay, in response to Nier saying that, Rester gets a little annoyed.
Nier, please be serious about this.
It is serious if they're both truly in love with him.
And Nier does make a valid argument here, especially when he goes on to say that if they are truly in love with him, then they'll do whatever he asks, no matter how crazy or dangerous it might be. So that's definitely something they need to keep in mind as they move forward. Now from there we enter the final scene of this episode, which focuses on Mikami and Gevanni as they ride a bullet train together. And as the two of them ride the train, they both notice some asshole harassing a woman, saying that because she's wearing a short skirt, it's an invitation to see what's under it. And it's just like, really? You're doing this? In a world where Kira's out here killing people for any reason he can think of, you're really gonna risk it all to harass this young girl? Are you fucking stupid? But whatever, despite this being just gross, I did find this part kind of funny.
Please, someone!
Like, my guy is really out here thinking he's Clark Kent turning into Superman. But while all of this is going on, Gevanni watches Mikami as he pulls out a phone and we hear what sounds like the camera app. Well, probably not an app on this phone, but regardless, we hear the sound of the camera going off. Which is a little weird, right? Like, why? But it isn't really expanded upon here, so it's probably nothing, right? I mean, the much more important part of what happens here is that after putting his phone away, he does this.
Mikami's just taken out a notebook.
Yeah, he just whipped it out on the train. Just casually and unabashedly whipped that thing out in public. The balls on this guy, am I right? But yeah, the notebook is out, and as the train comes to a stop, we see Mikami deadass just right in it. He even says his catchphrase as he does it.
Delete.
And Gevanni's just kind of freaking out because it's like, is this really happening right now? Now, immediately after this, we see Mikami get up and exit the train, and as Gevanni proceeds to follow after him, this happens. Yeah, he did. He died, and Gevanni saw it all go down. Mikami might have screwed the pooch on this one, which, one, that's actually such a crazy idiom when you really think about it, and two, that's crazy bad luck that Mikami got caught using the notebook just as he was supposed to send pages to Takada and start using a fake notebook. But that couldn't be what happened here, right? No, because he wrote the name down and then the guy died, so wait, Well, shit, let's just see what happens next. Oh, well, damn. I guess we'll just have to wait until next time to see how things play out. So, until then, roll credits. Anyway, that's the end of this video, but before we go, I just want to give a shout out to all the folks over on our Patreon. I want to thank all of our admirable assessors, our invaluable investigators, as well as our remarkable researchers, like Arrow Falcon Green, Game and Alchemist, Gary Huang, Jorge Ochoa Reyes, Legend Dragon, Mitch Corcoran, Pellets, Staff of the Crystal Serpent, The Best, Trinity Schiffer, Tyrant's Link, Vanellian, and Yggdrasil. And lastly, a special shout out to our official overanalyzers. Thank you Archangel89, Asia, Birdbath Keeper, Bob Van K, Cavarax XE, Chicken Wugget, Cody for Now, Seamard, Croy Raiden, Emilia, Psychedelic Palimpsest, I Am the Blonde Asshole, Jack Witt, Joey Helbig, Josh Thompson, and Matt J. Dave. I just want to say thanks again to all of y'all for helping make these videos possible. But yeah, if you liked this video, then consider dropping a like. If you really liked it, then consider subscribing. And if you just loved it and want to support the channel, then consider joining the Patreon. Anyway, that's it for this time. Until next time, friends, peace. Ooh, hi, Mama.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Can you say Dada?
Hi.
Hi, that's not Dada.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Can you say Dada? Can you say Papa?
Pocket.
Pocket. Oh, please don't do
Say
hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, that's gotta be good
That's
enough.
good.
Gotta be good enough. I'm gonna let you go.
Oh.
Okay. No. Oh my God.